Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Author. Today, I have Laura Pavlov here with me. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're on here. So, I kind of like to start these with a little bit of an icebreaker type of question just to get people ready and in the mood. So, especially for you, I figured this was a perfect question because you have two series that are one is mountains and one is beach. If you had to pick a place to vacation and just relax, would it be mountains or beach?
It would be beach.
Beach.
Yeah. I mean, I love the mountains too, but the beach is hard to beat. Yeah.
I'm going on a beach vacation in like a week and a half, so I totally understand that. I love
Oh,
the beach too.
the best. I love it. Are you going to Cottonwood Cove?
I wish. If it was real, you'd see me knocking on Lincoln's door being like, "Hello,
Hey.
where you at?"
Oh my gosh, I love it.
That's awesome. Well, we're talking mainly today about the Cottonwood Cove series. So first and foremost, before we kind of jump fully into that, if people maybe are new to you, just kind of quickly summarize who is Laura Pavlov.
Oh, I write pretty much small town romance now, like sweet, sexy, contemporary small town romance. I like a little bit of humor, a little bit of angst, always a happily ever after. I like to write family series, either family or friends, but I like 5 book series, and usually they take place in a small town, and you get to know all the side characters, and yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome. And I actually got introduced to you with the Cottonwood Cove series, and I adore it so much. I mean, I figured this about myself recently that I like the small town romance, but then when you write a whole series that's like following one family, I found out
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things because by the time you get to like the fourth or fifth book, like they're your friends, like they're your
Right.
family too. And I love it so much. So your newest book, I have all of them right here. We can see your nice, pretty stack.
Oh,
But your
thank
newest book
you.
is On the Shore. So we have obviously the discreet cover and the people cover. If people are just now, getting into this series, what can they expect with this book when they kind of jump on in with our newest story that you have?
Right, and they're all standalones, which is how all of my series are, where you can really jump in anywhere. If you start at the beginning, you're gonna they do progress that way, but you don't have to read them. It's not gonna ruin anything, so you can jump in. If you jump in with this one, it is a, small town, enemies to lovers, sports romance. He is a famous quarterback. She's a sports reporter, and, they get off on, to a really, bad start at the beginning, but they come full circle. So you can jump in there, and if that's your thing, like enemies to lovers, that is a good place to start.
Awesome. And then also there's the two other books. So you have starting with Into the Tide and then Under the Stars. And this is both also same small town romance. So what can people maybe, if this is they're going into the Cottonwood Cove series, you can,
Right.
small town, but what are some of the tropes that they can expect in these books as well? If they're like, you know what,
Yeah.
this is really for me, I want to pick this up.
Right, right. Because I'm a mood reader, so I totally get that. This series is based on 5 siblings, 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and, they each kind of get their own romance, their own book. So they're all in all of them, which is really fun. But book 1 is a brother's best friend, forbidden love, small town romance. Yeah, I love Lila and Hugh, and Hugh is the youngest Reynolds brother. He's the middle child. Book 2 is Under the Stars, and that is they're a really fun one. That is a grumpy sunshine billionaire romance. That is Georgia Reynolds. She's the baby of the family. She gets hired at this publishing company, and she is the assistant to this really grumpy billionaire. And they just like have such fun banter, and that was a really fun one. And then book 3 is Brinkley. She is the um, older of the 2 sisters, so second from the youngest sibling, and she is with her romance is she's the sports reporter, very strong, salty. She's really fun, bold, and independent, and she is going to be writing a story on this famous quarterback. So they've got all the enemies to lovers sparks flying there.
Lots of good banter in that one too. I
Yes,
was I think
yes.
that's one thing that you do really well in these stories, all of them, is the fact like you have all the romance in there, and obviously like that's people are picking them up because they want to see some romance and everything.
Right.
But the family aspect, but there's so much like funny moments for me that I would like just be reading and I was just laughing. Especially with the newest book on the shore, just the tension between these two and the fact that she was like so much like, I hate you. And he was like, I don't even like, I know why, but I don't agree with you. Like, why you hate
Right.
me.
Right, right. Definitely, and it's so fun to write that kind of banter, and, they were a fun one to write because, I think people expected him to just be this really arrogant athlete, and he turned out like he was a really good guy beneath it all. He was a big cinnamon roll and golden retriever, because I think he was very guarded because of his profession, but, once he found out, without any spoilers, he cost her job, and he did feel terrible. So you kind of got to see that he was a good guy beneath it all. He just was really guarded and, very protective of his privacy. So I think that, it was fun to kind of see all those layers peeled away with him.
No, I think it was awesome. And I like that their story, kind of takes them other places besides Cottonwood Cove. Don't want to give any
Right,
spoilers, but I like that we get to see like the traveling aspect and other
right,
things outside of the small town. It's still like set in the
right,
small town, but that was
right,
enjoyable for me. Now I know obviously that these three books are already out and published, but you have two more in the series. What can you
right.
kind of talk about and tease for those next two books that you have coming out?
Yeah, so book 4 is Before the Sunset, and that is Finn's book. That's a fake dating friends to lovers. I know, I'm excited.
Love Pen.
Yes, Finn is fun, and Finn, he's ended up like his was a really fun one. His is done. It's in proofreading now, and he has a filthy mouth. I hadn't realized how, but it worked for him. And theirs was just fun because they have such a history. So I love Friends to Lovers for that aspect. Finn and Reese have been, their moms are best friends, and they've known each other their entire lives. So they have that comfort, and that was a really fun one to write. And fake dating's just fun because they're kind of, pushed into this situation. And so that one is great. And right now, what I was just writing up until about 20 minutes ago is Cage's book, the final book in the Cottonwood Cove series. And that is a second chance single dad. He is a grumpy, broody. I think everyone knows him well by the time they get to book 5. And I'm excited to kind of it's fun when you write these series because you're seeing each character from the perspective of the main character. And when you get to write it, like now I finally get to write Cage's internal voice, and he's everything he's been built up to be, and some. Like his internal honesty is so fun to write because he's just like irritated by everybody but the people he really loves. So it's so fun to write that.
That's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to getting more of the brothers' perspective too. It's just awesome. And I think one of my favorite things about this series for people who maybe haven't picked it up, one reason to pick it up is this family's group chat. The group chat is my favorite thing about this series. Like anytime there was the back and forth with any of the books, I was just like, this is it. This is perfect. It's literally what a family group chat should be like.
Right. I love that. I have 5 siblings myself, so I am on an endless group chat. So I have good inspo because it's all over the place. And sometimes you get on and I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, what did I miss? And I have to scroll because I'm the only one on the West Coast. So so sometimes I wake up and I'm like, what is this? And then there's always side text, like talking about the group chat. So it's so fun to get to write that because obviously these are different. They're younger than we are, but it's fun. It's fun to have that kind of dynamic with your siblings.
That's awesome. So kind of taking that, since you said you have a little bit of inspiration for yourself, using that to your family's group chat. Do
Right.
you like to, when you're writing these types of books, do you use people, maybe your siblings or yourself? Do you ever put stuff from your real life into your books? Or do you kind of try to keep it just like, these are these characters and I'm going to let them be their own selves?
Right. So it's definitely fiction, but there's definitely, pieces of people in my life. Only Mine, which is book 5 in the Honey Mountain series, her character Dylan was definitely inspired by my older sister, and she's really proud of that. She loves that she went to a book signing with me in DC, and she would tell everyone like, I'm Dylan. I'm like, okay. So definitely like, she was the inspiration behind it, but it's a different story. It's you're bringing in different characters with it, but it's fun to bring in personalities of people that are, in your life. And sometimes it can just be, like observation. Being at an airport and watching a couple's interaction can sometimes inspire something, the way someone looks at someone else, or just something you pick up on. So definitely people in my life, people that I observe, things that you see or overhear can kind of spark something. So yeah, I think it's kind of, inspiration is everywhere for sure.
That's awesome. So I have to ask you, where do you feel like you are most inspired? I know you kind of said you feel like it everywhere, but is there a specific place that you feel just like that's where your brain is turning the most? Like that's where you feel like you're doing your best work?
Yeah, so a lot of my plotting, I'm not one that like sits down and plots so well. I'll sit down and write it, like, put it on index cards once I have it. But most of mine is with music. Like when I walk, exercise, for whatever reason, it's always been a place that like something will play out. Like if I get stuck, I'll go for a walk, put on music, and for some reason, then it just kind of, the bathtub is a big one. So it must be relaxing, like when I'm sitting, it's hard for me to do it because I'll check my email or social media, but when I'm on a walk, or that's where like so much will happen. Listening to music, on vacation, it happens a lot. A lot of times when I get in bed at night, like when I'm trying to fall asleep and I can't sleep, something will start playing in my head. I'll be like, oh, I'll start seeing a scene play out, and then I have to get my phone and put it in my notes app so I don't forget. But yeah, so I think it must be when I kind of relax and am not working, my
Do you
brain will kind of go.
do you feel like you're more, I know I finally learned this lingo from doing these interviews. Do you feel like you're more of on the plotter side of things, or do you think you're more of on the pantser side of things? Or maybe do you kind of fall down the middle when it comes to writing your books?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a plant. I think they called a planter, like a middle. Get there. I don't know what they're gonna get is, um, oh, it says we're having connection issues, but I don't think we are. Sorry. So for me, it's kind of a good mix. Like I'll plot some scenes out, and then I kind of let them take me. And sometimes I'll plot something out, and then when I'm writing, it goes a different way. And I kind of have learned, to go with that, like to trust it and see where it goes. But
Mhm.
most of the time, I have everything, the main points plotted out, and then I just kind of let the characters figure out how we're going to get there.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool too when authors say things like, they let the characters lead them. I obviously don't know what that's like, but I think it's cool that I feel like when you're writing a character, they become like your friend, like a part
Hmm.
of you, especially when you're, writing that specific book that it's,
Right.
something that you're going to and you're having to live in their brain and everything.
Right.
What is that like for you? Like when you finish a book, because obviously you put out a lot of books in one year. How is that
Yeah.
hard for you to, you're in one character's mind or two characters' minds because you have the dual point of views, but to go from one for so long and then like have to leave it and then go into another one, is it hard to separate, or do you find that it's pretty easy to kind of just like, okay, now I'm done with this and it's time to move on?
Yeah, it's not too hard usually because you kind of end the story, so you get closure with them. Um, Sometimes it's harder for me to go from one series to a new series, like when I've been there for a year and you start a new one, it takes a minute, like to kind of find your rhythm with that new family and those characters. Like when I switched from Honey Mountain, I'd been there for 5 books, and when I switched over to Cottonwood Cove, like, it's so fun, but by book 2, I felt like, "Oh, now I really know them," as you get further, and now I'm writing book 5, so I feel like I know them so well, so I'm sure, like, the new series, it's not only the main character isn't the problem, it's setting up the new town and side characters and laying that groundwork. Like, you have to go back where when you're at book 5 in a series, you know all the side characters so well, and so it takes a little bit of time, like, to make sure you're taking the time to create those scenes and, describe a new place and a new family and their, personalities. But it's definitely interesting, to be like in the head of a 27-year-old guy, like obviously I don't talk the way they do, but and I always explain that to people like, yeah, I don't talk like that, but they do. If they talked like me, it would be super weird, So you just kind of have to kind of channel that. And sometimes, I mean, I said with Finn, he's, had a pretty filthy mouth. And so there would be times I'd be typing and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that. So it's funny because you just kind of get get them in your head and you just kind of go with it. And like sometimes when I read it back, I'll be like, oh my gosh, that is, yeah. So you're laughing and crying along with them because so it is really fun.
That's awesome. So taking Cottonwood Cove as an example, do you do research or anything? Do you like maybe on vacation or something, you find a town and you're like, okay, I want to write something like this? Or how do you go about, like you just said, you created Cottonwood Cove. So you're putting all of these restaurants and places that people are going to and all of these things. How do you go about writing that? Do you do some research before? Or are you kind of just like, you know what, we're starting scratch and we're just going to put it all together?
Right. No, I definitely research, and I didn't for Willow Springs. That was the only time I've ever written about like an area I've never been to. Most of the places that I like, Honey Mountain was kind of inspired by Lake Tahoe, which is one of our favorite places to go. So it's easier for me to describe because I've spent a lot of time there. And I've written about Chicago, where I grew up, San Francisco, where I lived, Tahoe. Cottonwood Cove is loosely based on like a Big Sur type of area, but it not to the point of restaurants and things like that. I'll create the town, but the area, like what kind of, the type of weather they have, that it's close to San Francisco and, Tahoe's, Nevada and California. So that part of it, I will keep consistent, but then I'll, create my own restaurants, my own firehouse, or, things that you want to have in that town. And, but most of the time I'll write about parts of the country that I've spent time in, just in areas that I like that, I can kind of like create a fun town off of that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense and everything. And I was just curious, again, you do so many of these books that are on these small towns and everything, and so different, like Honey Mountain versus Cottonwood Cove, you have like
Right,
mountains versus beach, and it's just very different.
right.
So it's cool to know that you go back and you do those research and everything for it. I'm going to bring up Honey Mountain just, for a few minutes. So some of
Sure.
those characters are showing up in this series too. So how is that for you to decide, okay, I'm going to kind of mix things up and I want to give people who have read that series, the chance to see some of their favorite characters again and kind of
Right.
maybe what they're up to.
Yeah, this was my first interconnected series. So the Honey Mountain siblings were 5 sisters and the Thomas sisters, and then their cousins are the Reynolds that are these 5 siblings. So it was the first time doing that. And the only part that you just have to remember to bring them in, like um, it's tricky when you're doing that sometimes because you want to stay focused on the romance, but then you've got this small town where you need to bring in these side characters, and then you need to bring the siblings in that are going to be in each book. And now you need to not forget to bring the cousins in and to remember, like, time wise, how many kids do they have now? Who was pregnant in the last book? And now we're forward 3 months. So there's a lot of sticky notes in this office and white, boards with things, because that part it's hard to keep it all straight, and you will get called out for it if you mess it up. So, and I definitely, try to keep it all straight, but it's easy to, mess. I'm like, wait, how many kids does she have now? And how old would that little toddler be? But it is fun, and it's fun for me to get to visit them. So I try to bring them in at least once in every book, like to an event, a wedding or Thanksgiving, or because people do love to see those characters. And so the Cottonwood Cove series is going to be interconnected to the new series, which is the Magnolia Falls series that comes out next year. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again, where they're going to have to visit. Like, I'll have to stay up on it, but it's fun because then it kind of forces you to like stay present on those characters.
That's awesome. I love that. I love it so much. I mean, it's exciting, especially when you get to have things interconnected. I think as a reader, that's probably one of our favorite things. I don't want to speak for a bunch of people, but it's always really exciting when you get to go back and like relive with other characters. But I can only imagine, having you start to have like 3 different series all at once, and you're like, okay, what were they doing here? And how do I
Right.
get back?
Right. You don't want to mess anything up, like, and you remember them as you left them, but like time has moved forward. So you have to remember to like what would be happening now. Um, So yeah, and then, people that love those series want very, they want specific. I'll get tons of DMs like, can you tell me you know, how were they in the delivery room when they had their second child? So I'm like, oh, well, we just see them moving forward. You don't get all the details, but people will ask. So I try. I'm like, oh, it was, I'll give how I pictured it being, and I'm happy to share that if people want to know it.
That's awesome. So I have to ask you, and this can be a pretty hard question sometimes.
Okay.
With all of these series and everything, do you have a favorite book that you have written that's just like sticks out, that is your favorite, has like the special place in your heart?
I wish I didn't. I honestly would say if I did. It's kind of like whichever one. It's like your kids, like which so it changes all the time. But for me, it feels like whichever one I'm in at the moment, I'm really attached to because I'm writing there. So you're feeling all these, feels for them. But there's definitely books that were easier to write. Like Under the Stars was, for whatever reason, I wrote it really fast. It was super easy. Sometimes it can also be just what's happening in your life. Like if you're traveling and you're interrupted and it's like you have to start and stop and get back into your flow, where that one was just a great patch where we didn't have a lot going on. So it was an easier one to write. So for that purpose, but character wise, like I get pretty attached to each one. So like right now it would be Cage and Presley because I'm in it, but Finn and Reese are pretty fresh in my mind too, because I just finished that whole book. So when I think of them, like I just start laughing because their story is so funny. So yeah, I would pick I would honestly tell if I had one. I just really don't have a favorite.
How hard is it for you? Because you're talking about, so you're writing book 5 right now. You
Right.
just finished book 4 though, but you just put out book 3. So everyone, is still, maybe if they're picking it up, a lot of people are still talking about Brinkley and Lincoln.
Right.
How is that for you kind of be like so far ahead, but then you have to go kind of backwards and be like, okay, no, I have to be here for, time, especially when
Right.
you're publishing day and everything and marketing. How is that for you kind of like trying to keep that balance?
I kind of love it because when it releases, like people will post teasers and excerpts, and I'll read it, and I'm laughing too. I'm like, oh, I forgot that was so great. So it's fun to kind of go back to their story. Like when people talk about Lincoln and Brinkley, I loved them. So it's so fun to remember like certain scenes. Someone just brought up the canoe scene, and I'm like, oh, I loved. Oh, there you go, baby. Sorry, my dog's wanting a treat. I'll remember that scene and then I'll just laugh. And it's such it's like when you're talking to friends and someone brings up, like, remember when we did this, and you just are taken back there and it's so fun. So I love it. And I'm very submerged in the series as a whole. So it helps that it's, like one series. So they're all still so present in each book. So that helps because, I'm like, oh, I just had Brinkley in the book today. So, I remember her and Lincoln just had a little scene. So yeah, but it is sometimes it'll take you a second. I'll be like, wait, which scene? Like, remind me because I'm forward a little bit. But yeah, it's still pretty fresh.
That's awesome. Well, I have some of the books here, so I'm going to show some of the covers because I have to ask you now. Obviously, these covers are stunning, and not only with this series, but I mean, all of your series, like the books are so pretty. I have the discreet covers for most of these books, but then I also have the people cover for On the Shore. How do you go about picking your book covers when it comes to these books and deciding, okay, this is what I want to do, people cover wise, this is what I want to do discreet wise, and how do you go about, deciding those things?
Yeah, I do the couple covers first. I am a couple cover person. I love the discreet, but I'm older. I definitely love couple covers. I think the discreet are beautiful, but that's kind of like a fun part. And I do my covers before I write the book. So finding the couple that I kind of picture for them is so fun. Like I love the cover process, both the couples and the discreet, like coming up with the concept for those. And small town is so fun so that the scenery is really important, like where it takes place and what the background is. And for these 5 books, we did photo shoots for these, which was really fun. So getting to kind of have a say in where they would be, what it would look like and what they would be wearing and poses was so much fun. The Honey Mountain series, I did exclusive photos, which was fun, but they were already shot. So I got to pick those. This was my first time doing photo shoots, and the model that's on Into the Tide, she is the photographer that did all 5 shoots. So that was really fun. I couldn't find a Hugh and Lila, and that is her and her fiance on book one. So it's kind of fun.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's really fun. And I love working with her. So that part of it, the process is so creative and fun. And it gets me excited to write the book because, you can see the couple and then I do the discreet next. After I do the couple covers, I try to come up with one idea for special editions.
that's especially that you have these connections too that, I mean, I wouldn't even think these covers are obviously, and they're stunning, but that's cool that you have that connection. It's like, okay, it was your photographer and her fiance and everything. So there was already like a love story in that story that you get to like now
Yes.
share, and it's a little bit different. Do you plan on for your next series doing another pre-done like photo shoot like this, how you did for the Cottonwood Cove?
So I have the first 3 done for next year. So I'll look for couples and then I'll look for a couple that fits what I picture for them, and then see if they would want to do a photo shoot for it. Or, sometimes you get lucky and you find a photo that's already, done, and you reach out and see if you can get that. You can also, I mean, my earlier ones, I did a lot of stock photos. So there's so many different ways to do it, but I love finding the couple that kind of fits what I picture for the story. And then, doing a photo shoot in a beautiful location. And yeah, it's so fun to do that.
That's really awesome. So, real quick before we kind of wrap up stuff on this, with your series next year, can you say anything about it yet? Or is that one like lock and key under wraps right now to get people excited for?
Yeah, no. So in book and On the Shore, you meet Lincoln's brother Romeo Knight, and he is going to be book one of the new series, and that one is for pre-order now. It's in the back of the book. Loving Romeo, and that is going to be a sports kind of good girl, bad boy romance, small town, and then that series will be 5 guy best friends that have grown up together. They're like that ride or die friendship, and each of their stories.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yay. Can't wait
Yeah.
for that. That's so awesome. Well,
Yeah.
before, we go and everything, where can people not only find you easily, but also find your books if they're like, okay, I love the idea of the series, I want to jump in. Where's the best way for them to get connected to you and then to see some of these books?
Yeah. So all of my books are in KU on Kindle Unlimited on Amazon, under Laura Pavlov. My website is laurapavlov.com. All of my social media is pretty much Laura Pavlov author. I'm most active on Instagram, and then I have a Facebook group called Pavlov's Readers, like PAV-LOVES. And we do, giveaways and book boyfriend talk in there. And that one's really fun. I post them, daily pretty much on Instagram. So it's a good place to keep up with what's coming. And yeah, everything's on Amazon. You can jump in really anywhere. If you're into the small town thing, jumping in the Honey Mountain series, Always Mine, is a good place because it goes right into Cottonwood Cove. But Willow Springs, which was before that, is a little bit younger. The first book is a YA, but then the other books are college and beyond. Those also are like Friday Night Lights meets Gilmore Girls type of vibe on those. The newer ones, Honey Mountain and Cottonwood Cove, are definitely sexier. So if you're looking for a little heat, I would start with those.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on today. Do you have any questions that maybe I didn't ask you, or anything that you want to share with people that are watching this that just
Oh
should know?
gosh. Just thank you. Like, this release was so great, and I am just so grateful to everyone who takes a chance on my books. I know there's so many out there, so I appreciate the support so much. If you subscribe to my newsletter, which is you can find on my website, if you read, reply to me. I always write back. I love hearing from readers. So, and I hope I see people at book signings this year. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for all the support.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on today. This was so much fun. And I love this series. This is my introduction to you. So I'm going to have to go back and read all the Honey Mountain series now because I'm
Yay!
obsessed. You hooked me. I'm here. I'm
Thank
here
you
to
so much.
say,
That
but
means the world to me. Thank you.
yes, I loved it so much. And I can't wait, honestly, to read Finn's story. And then it gets like a cage and just everything. It was so good. And just again, thank you so much for coming on today. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And you guys make sure that you are saying subscribe to me to see all of the future author interviews that we're going to have here, future book hauls, recommendations, all of the above. And until next time, thanks, guys.
Bye.